Hi, Chuck Hawley from West Marine, and today I'm talking with Amanda Swan Neal and John Neal about making landfalls. So, obviously, you do a lot of long-distance cruising, but every cruise has to end up with a landfall. What are some of the tips that you give your students on making safe landfalls?
Well, Chuck, a lot of people that we listen to are really concerned about running into something in the middle of the ocean, a semi-submerged container, and sinking their boat. In reality, their biggest danger is in making landfall and making it at the wrong time. And so one of the golden rules is to never make landfall at night in an unfamiliar port. Another one is never to make landfall if you're unsure of your position. Having accurate charts is a huge help. We actually use both paper charts and electronic charts, and many times we use two different electronic charting systems at the same time. Visual is very, very important for making landfall. So having good binoculars, we actually have a pair of Fujinon stabilized binoculars, and those are incredible for picking out nav marks from a long distance off.
So how do you keep from wanting to just get there? I mean,
after
yeah, right. 2 or 3 weeks at sea, I know that the first thing I want to do is to step on that shore. So I mean, you must have pretty good control over your emotions or your cruise emotions.
Well, we actually start planning the landfall several days out. And so we'll start slowing the boat down, reefing, or speeding up, piling on more sail, trying to get into that daylight envelope for landfall.
Amanda, what are your thoughts on that? What are some of the tips?
I think being prepared for landfall, so having your boat set up with your systems down pat, keeping things moving, not skipping meals. Often cruisers forget to have breakfast and then they get there and an incident happens and they're just not fueled up to arrive and be prepared. Depth is important, so being familiar with coming into that shelf that your seas may be building, getting ready to reef, watching all your systems, keeping an eye on the weather. You may have squalls coming down from a valley that you're not familiar with or you don't expect.
If you're going into a relatively narrow entrance in areas that have coral, do you wait until the sun's mostly overhead before you make that entrance?
Makes such a difference. The visibility factor is definitely better. And we're also really concerned about squalls. This last season we were making landfall after a 2,500 mile passage in the Roaring Forties from New Zealand to a very small island called Rurutu. Just as we were approaching the very small harbor, a squall came over the island, and we actually turned around and sailed away from the island for about an hour until that squall had passed, because we knew we had a narrow channel, and with the rain and the increased wind, it really increased the risk.
Great. And so will you send somebody up the rig so that they can look more vertically into the water, or is that not necessary?
That's generally not necessary. We've got charting accuracy, and the visual, having someone aloft is another aspect that we're worried about somebody else up the rig. So standing high aloft, we've got granny bars or push pits at the mast, so that gives us enough visual. If you do go aground and someone's up the rig, it's a potential for them to, so we're sort of looking out for their safety feature more so.
So you mentioned electronic charts. The knock on using electronic charts, especially in the South Pacific, has been the longitudinal offset of some of the island chains.
Chuck, it's not just the South Pacific, it's the Caribbean, it's basically all third world areas of the world. Europe and North America, the charts are amazing. Scandinavia, the charts are great, but so much of the world that we sail in, the charts are not great. The electronic charts often are even less accurate than the paper charts, and there's some reasons that those inaccuracies get compounded. We are real big proponents of multiple redundancies, and so besides the best paper chart of the area, I always like to have two separate electronic charting systems going at the same time. So we have the chart plotter radar that's running navionics, and then we have a laptop that's running a completely separate system. Each of these has its own GPS input, and it's amazing. We've never had an incident where both of the electronic chart missed an island or missed a reef, but we've had many instances that we've documented where an island or reef will not show up at all on one system but will show up on the other. So redundancies is important for your safety.
Absolutely. Well, some really good advice. Anything else before we...
Radar.
Radar.
Because having the radar overlay on your charts gives you the truth of what's actually there. So there will be land, or there will be a reef system, and that shows up on radar, where it won't show up. If it's moved on the electronic chart, it will show up as a radar return. So that's highly appropriate as well.
And it's so interesting that many times the radar profile of the island, which is real, is
Mimicking.
substantially different than the electronic charted profile of the island, and so it's just a good way. You know, another tip that we've done for a long time, long before electronic charts, is once we get anchored, we plot the GPS position on the paper chart. You wouldn't believe how many times it puts you up on a mountain or out in the middle of the ocean, and that's a way to establish the accuracy or inaccuracy of the chart right away.
So do you give this feedback back to the cartographic suppliers?
We did. At one time we used to send updates back to the British Admiralty and to NOAA, but I don't think, we never heard back, so.
Well, if you're getting ready to make a landfall, don't do it at night. Don't do it if you don't know where you are. And obviously you had some other really good tips here. Thanks very much, John and Amanda, and thank you for watching.